But however little this objection may be countenanced, even by presidents among ourselves, it may be satisfactory to take a nearer view of its intrinsic merits. From a close examination, it will appear that restraints upon the discretion of the legislature in respect to military establishment in time of peace would be improper to be imposed, and if imposed from the necessities of society, would be unlikely to be observed. Though a wide ocean separates the United States from Europe, yet there are various considerations that warn us against an excess of confidence or security on one side of us, and stretching far into our rear are growing settlements subject to the dominion of Britain. On the other side, and extending to meet the British settlements, are colonies and establishments subject to the dominion of Spain. This situation and the vicinity of the West India Islands belonging to these two powers create between them, in respect to their American possessions and in relations to us, a common interest. The savage tribes on our western frontier ought to be regarded as our natural enemies. Their natural allies, but they have most to fear from us and most to hope from them. The improvements in the art of navigation have, as to the facility of communication, rendered distinct nations in a great measure neighbors. Britain and Spain are among the principal maritime powers of Europe. A future concert of views between these nations ought not to be regarded as improbable. The increasing remoteness of consanguinity in everyday diminishing of consanguinity is everyday diminishing the force of the family compact between France and Spain, and politicians have ever the great reason considered the ties of blood as feeble and precarious links of political connection. These connections combined admonish us not to use too sanguine in considering ourselves as entirely out of the reach of danger. Previous to the Revolution, and ever since the peace, there has been not a constant necessity for keeping small garrisons on our western front. No person can doubt that these will continue to be indispensable, if it should be only against the ravages and depredations of the Indians. These garrisons must either be furnished by occasional detachments from the militia, or by permanent corps in the pay of the government. The first is impracticable, and if impracticable, would be pernicious. The militia would not long, if at all, submit to be dragged from their occupations and families to perform the most disagreeable duty in times of profound peace. And if they could be prevailed upon or compelled to do it, the increased expense of a frequent rotation of service and the loss of labor and disconcertion of the industrious pursuits of individuals would form conclusive objections to the scheme. It would be a burdensome and injurious to the public, as ruinous to private citizens. The latter source of permanent crops in the pay of the government amounts to a standing army in time of peace, a small one indeed, not the less a not the less real for being small. This is a simple view of the subject that shows us at once the impropriety of a constitutional interdiction of such establishments and the necessity of leaving the matter to the discretion and prudence of the legislature. In proportion to our increase in strength, it is probable, nay, it may be said certain, that Britain and Spain would augment their military establishments in our neighborhood. If we should not be willing to be exposed in a naked and defenseless condition to their insults and encroachments, we should find it expedient to increase our frontier garrisons in some ratio to the force by which our western settlements might be annoyed. There are and will be particular posts and possessions of which will include the command of a large district of territory and facilitate future invasions of the remainder. It may be added that some of these posts will be key to trade with the Indian nations. Can any man think it would be wise to leave such posts in a situation to be at any instant seized by one or the other of two neighboring and formidable powers? To act this part would be to desert all the usual maxims of prudence and policy. If we mean to be a commercial people, and even to be secure on our Atlantic side, we must endeavor as soon as possible to have a navy. To this purpose, there must be dockyards and arsenals, and for the defense of these, fortifications and probably garrisons. When a nation has become so powerful by sea that it can protect its dockyards by its fleets, this supersedes the necessity of garrisons for that purpose. But where naval establishments are in their infancy, moderate garrisons will, in all likelihood, be found an indispensable security against descents of the destruction of the arsenals and dockyards, and sometimes of the fleet itself. PUBLIUS.